This conference will now be recorded.
All right. So, before we get into the actual AWS modules and services, we're gonna begin with understanding a little basics around networking and Linux. You might already be familiar with a lot of these, because you guys are working in storage and backup and other areas. So if you think that when I'm going through a particular topic, if that's something that this is something that I have already have expertise with, and we don't have to go through this again, you can let me know. If you both of you feel the same way, I will skip it, so we can maybe put the same time effort in another different topic. Okay, so you can always let me know. We're gonna begin with networking, and then we'll get into the Linux basics, and then the actual AWS sessions. All right. So to begin with, networking, as you all know, is basically a communication medium that would allow any two devices. It can be any devices. It can be a servers. It can be a mobile phones, or now cloud, right? Any devices to interact with each other. You need some kind of a network. Um, the most common is the wired network that we see, or in terms of the data center environment. Although wireless network is what we use for domestic purpose, in the data center environment, we mostly see wired network. The reason being consistency, and not having a shared network where your wireless is shared, right? With a wired network, you will be able to achieve the dedicated network, which is needed for a IT environment. Now, coming to the different kinds of networks, there are two kinds. If broadly, if I have to classify, one is a public network, other is the private network, right? Let me grab this. So you have public network and you have private network. So public network is one where anyone can access, right? Like for example, Google or Facebook or Yahoo, right? These websites are available on the public network. They're sitting, in some data center, but then the network is set up so that they can be accessible from anywhere in the world, right? Or even AWS cloud now. So these come under public network. Whereas private network is something like your office premise, right? Maybe your own data center for your company, where things are restricted within a particular firewall or a network boundary, right? So unless you are in that network boundary, you won't be able to interact with any device, or even your home network, right? Let's say you have 10 devices connected to your Wi-Fi in your home network. If they want to talk to each other, maybe for sharing purposes, like using the app Share It, or anything that they want to communicate between the devices, they are using private network, right? For example, if Android phone wants to send some data to one of your other iPad, it does not go via the internet and come back, right? It's all within the same network. So that's private network. So in case of AWS also, you would have the same approach. You have public network and private network. Depending upon the use case, right? You can build a public or private network. For example, if you're building a web server, right, in an AWS environment, then obviously you want to make it public, because it needs to be accessible by anyone who would have the URL. A private network, maybe you're building a database or some application that you want to restrict to certain users, then you would make it private. So Amazon has the ability where you can segregate the networks based on public and private. Okay. Now, in terms of networking, right? The way you identify uh, a node or a server, or any end device that is participating in the network, right? The way you uniquely identify that particular device is using an IP address, right? So this is the unique identity for any device participating in the network. Obviously, we know that no two devices in the same network can have the same IP address. Well, you can assign, right? It's not that it won't let you assign. You still can assign, multiple IP addresses, the same IP address to multiple devices in the same network, but then that will create an IP conflict, right? You don't want that to happen. So we have to be careful when we are assigning IP addresses to make sure it's all unique across the same network. So even when we are using a DNS name, let's say we are trying to connect to google.com per se, um, even though we are typing google.com to connect, but then um, it it needs to have some kind of an IP address in order to reach from my laptop to Google server, right? That means google.com is being resoluted to a IP address. Okay, it's being resolved to an IP address, and that IP address is what we use to traverse through the network from my PC all the way to, let's say, a Google server in US to be able to connect and load the web page. Right? So IP address is what is needed for anyone to communicate to anyone else within the network. Right. So let's take example of our home network. Right. It's a classic example of how we define both private and public network. So let's say I'm connected to my Wi-Fi and I would like to browse google.com. Right? So that is basically a public network. That means I'm trying to access some server, some website, outside of my network, right? Now, if I want to interact with a device within the same home network, then that is private network communication because I'm just, interacting within the same network. So depending upon which end device you are interacting with, right, you may need different IPs. So if you're interacting with a public network, you need a public IP. If you're interacting with a device within your network, right, maybe another mobile device or a iPad within your same home Wi-Fi network, then you need a private IP. Can I have multiple IPs assigned to a single device, guys?
For a like DHCP, you can't, right? Or
Okay.
there are two, like static and dynamic IP assignment.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Can assign
Okay.
multiple IPs to the same node, and by multiple IPs we can create a bond and we can.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So I'll come to the static versus DHCP discussion a little later, but for this particular one, yes, you can have multiple IP addresses provided you have interfaces, right? Like for example, let's take a server. A server can have a single NIC card or it can have multiple NIC cards, right? It can have multiple 1 GB ports or 10 GB ports. Now even 25, 40 GB ports are available. So you can have multiple ports on a single server. So a single port can have an IP address. So if you have 4 ports, you can have 4 IP addresses, one residing on each port, right? So depending upon how many ports you have, you can have that many IP addresses. On top of that, if you want to have multiple IP addresses on the same port, even that is possible. So yes, a single device can have multiple IP addresses. There are a few concepts around it, like bonds and VLANs. Okay, um, I, I'll probably explain that a little later. Okay. So for now, yes, a device can have both IP addresses, public and private. So in my case, right, my phone would have a private IP address and a public IP address. Usually, um, the private IP address range for your Wi-Fi network is defined in the address range, something like this, 1.x. Okay. Um, that means the last octet, the last octet is what can vary. The first three octets are constant. So let's say if I'm the first person who connected to the Wi-Fi. I just got into the home, no one else is at home. So only my mobile device is connected to the Wi-Fi, right? Then I probably will get a 192.168.1.2, okay? Because 1.1 is assigned to your router itself. Your Wi-Fi router will take the first IP address, 1.1. And then later on is for your devices. So let's say I just got in, I get a 1.2, and I turn on my computer, it can get a 1.3, right? And so on. So basically, every device that gets connected to your Wi-Fi will be assigned a private IP address in this range. Okay. Now, can I use this private IP to connect to Google.com? Guys,
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
okay. So let's take an example. All right, let's take an example. Let's say, I myself, I have my own Wi-Fi connected, etc. And then just my neighbor, he also has a Wi-Fi setup with his device. He wants. So let's say both of us are connected to our Wi-Fi's, right? I will have my own Wi-Fi network. He has his own Wi-Fi network, right? And I got assigned a 192.168.1.2 IP, private IP. He also got assigned a 192.168.1.2 IP. Possible, right? I mean, it's a local network, private network, so two different networks, so the same IP address can be used. Okay. Now, I try to connect to Google.com using my private IP, 192.168.1.2. So I sent a query to Google that, hey, I want to, load this web page, and it now has to respond me back. Now, both of us, right, have the same IP, the same private IP. So if I'm talking to Google representing myself as 192.168.1.2, he's also the same IP, right? Isn't there a chance that if I am requesting Google to load a website or a web page for me, the response will actually go to my neighbor?
No,
What do you think?
No, no, actually, when there
because
should be
ISP,
some mechanism.
we will first contact with the ISP, and then ISP will contact with the Google, and the response will be traveled from Google to ISP, ISP to our router.
Okay, so am I using my private IP? Am I using my private IP to connect to
We are not
google.com
using
to
our private
represent?
IP. No, no. Actually, the ISP will traverse our connection, route our connection.
No, that's fine. The path is fine, but my point I'm trying to make here is, we don't use
Actually,
private
we are
IP.
not using
Okay.
private IP.
Yes.
Private
So
IP
to
is just a
communicate,
physical entity.
yes, to communicate to any public network, right? Google.com, Facebook.com, AWS, anything, we need a public IP. So my device, my phone, it needs some kind of a public IP, maybe, 10, 10, 10, 10, right? It needs a public IP. If it does not have a public IP, there is no way it can communicate over the public internet. And this public IP has to be unique across any other device that is actively connected to the internet across the world. So if I have a public IP like this assigned to my device, that means no one else in the whole world can have the same IP address, right? So that uniqueness is going to be broader now because it's public internet is the, like every device connected pretty much to public internet, right? So the same rule apply. IP address in a network should never be the same. So this public IP is going to be unique for me. So just keep in mind that whenever you're communicating over the internet, you need to have a public IP assigned. With private IP, you cannot traverse the public internet. Okay. All right. Now, along with IP address, there is another important parameter for any device, participating in the network, called as MAC address. So MAC address is a static, unique number that is assigned to a particular device. It can be a phone, it can be a laptop, it can be a smart washing machine, it can be a smart TV. Pretty much any device that wants to participate in a network needs to have a static and a unique MAC address. Okay, it's a 64-bit long number. Okay, it's represented in hexadecimal, so to easily
I,
represent it, but it's a 64-bit number. Now,
I
why do you
went
think?
out.
Yes, go
Sorry
for it.
about regarding of the public IP. We the private IP 192.168.1.2 it is means it can be dynamic, but the once we purchase any mobile or any device, we,
Uh-huh.
as you said that the public IP will be unique in worldwide, right? So
That's
for
right.
example, now I have connected my mobile to laptop and I am
Mm-hmm.
using my mobile internet to the laptop, right?
Okay.
Mobile as Wi-Fi. So
Okay.
currently I cannot see any public IP over there on my mobile
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because I have to see. I should have some private IP to my mobile. Plus, I have one public IP as well because I
Mhm.
cannot communicate using private IP.
That's right.
If I have to connect to the internet, I have to use the public IP, right?
Right.
So somewhere I cannot see the public IP over the mobile.
Okay. So there's a concept called as NAT, Network
Uh,
Address Translation. I will talk about that. So I think that will clarify your doubt.
okay. Netting and bridge. Okay, we will talk it later. Bridge host
Yeah.
network. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
So MAC address is that unique 64-bit, um, address, right? So if we already have an IP address, which is unique, right? And we're saying it's unique. So why do we even have a MAC address? Like, what's the importance of a MAC address? What do you think? Okay, no
MAC
one.
address is when we purchase anything, or suppose we search in a laptop, the MAC address is by default with the it's hard code with
Mm-hmm.
the device itself, and
Right.
it cannot be and it's a unique identity to respect to the hardware. And
Okay.
if suppose during the DHCP plugin process, the MAC
Uh-huh.
address you can clearly say that when a message is passed from server to DHCP server to the client during the plugin process, it will check whether the MAC address is available or not for that entity, and it will pass the acknowledgement. So MAC address advantages during that plugin process. It's one of
Okay.
the
Okay.
example.
Okay. So let me give another example, which maybe just we see and hear about in the real life, right? Like hacking. People try to use certain cyber tools in order to spoof as a different user connecting from a different country, right? There are a lot of these VPN tools that you have. So even though you are in India, you can spoof that you are using a IP address that belongs to some country, Venezuela, South Africa, some country, right? Although you are actually in India. So IP spoofing is one of the cyber crime, and that is possible. by changing your IP address. That means you're not saying that you're connecting from your public IP, but you're spoofing that you're connecting from some other public IP in some other country. So with IP spoofing, that is possible. You can change your IP address, but your MAC address will still be the same. And that's how, if cybersecurity needs to identify, trace you back, right? They use the MAC address of where the connection is coming from. Again, it's not as easy as I can say. I mean, it's obviously the hackers, right? They would use other advanced mechanisms in order to not reveal their MAC address, and there's a lot of other things that they do. But that's basically the advantage of a MAC address is it is unique across the world. You cannot alter the MAC address. The only way to alter a MAC address is when the device dies. Okay, when the device dies is when the MAC address goes away. So in a server world, every network interface card, a NIC card, will have a unique MAC address. So every 10 GB, 1 GB NIC card will have a unique MAC address. And like Dhyanesh said, it is hard coded into the device. It can never be altered, and the only way it is gone is when the hardware dies. Okay, so that's MAC address. Let's talk about DNS. Again, we will be expanding more discussions around DNS and what type of DNS records are available and all that when we get into a service called Route 53 in AWS. But for now, we'll just do a brief. Okay. So DNS stands for Domain Name Service, and it is responsible for giving a alias or a friendly name to a IP address, right? Because for humans, remembering IP addresses for connecting to a particular device is hard, right? We want a more friendly name to be able to connect. We use DNSs for pretty much like we take a website or even internally, right? If you're trying to access an application, a storage device, a switch, we always prefer to have some kind of a DNS name attached to that IP, so it's friendly enough to remember as well as use. So that's one advantage of DNS. Two, DNS can help in multiple scenarios actually. If you want to maybe a load balance kind of scenario where you have a DNS name and you have multiple web servers, like let's say Google, right? Google obviously will not have just one server, right? They will have thousands, if not 10,000s of servers, right? Now every request that's going to google.com is resolving to one among those IP addresses, right? And once it is resolved, you then are able to connect and interact. So DNS is helping you resolve that. Now, let's say you have there are like 10,000 servers, right, that Google has, and one server among that had a hardware failure. So Google will make sure that the DNS is updated based on some logic, some health checking logic, where they keep on checking all the servers up status. If a particular server is down, then they will remove that IP address for that bad hardware from the DNS. That means when you connect Google.com, you will never resolve to that bad IP or that bad server. So it basically is helping you from a availability standpoint, routing it to the servers that are up and running. That's two. Three, it will help you from a load balancing perspective as well, because you're not the only one connecting to Google.com. There's so many other users, and you would want to route them to multiple servers, so it's not just going to one or two servers the entire load. Also, if you have observed, right, like when we type google.com, it resolves, like if you're doing it from India, it resolves to google.co.in, right? So it basically, like regionalizes Google to India, so it loads the more relevant content to India. That means there should be certain separate servers right, for google.co.in. But we're not typing co.in, right? We're typing .com. So how is that happening? So in that case, it's not a name to an IP, but a name to a name. So depending upon which public IP, so this is how they do it, right? The workflow. Depending upon which public IP the request is coming to google.com, right? And certain countries have certain public IP addresses reserved, like the octets, okay? So based on that, the DNS will figure out, oh, this request is coming from Delhi, India, right? Which means I have to load a google.co.in. So google.com internally will resolve to google.co.in. That's called as a alias, okay? So that will happen. Now google.co.in should resolve to one of the IP addresses, right? Because that's only how we communicate. So then that resolves to one of the IP addresses, to a Google server that is personalized for Indian users, right? So DNS is basically helping us resolve a name to a IP. Now, let's say I got a new router, I bought a new router, I set it up, I connected my mobile device, and first time I'm trying to connect to google.com, right? So when in my mobile, I type google.com, let's try to understand how the DNS resolution path is traveled, okay? I type
Why?
google.com. Um, yes.
Sorry, Rai. Could you please repeat? You are using mobile as a Wi-Fi device, or mobile internet to connect to laptop, or laptop internet to connect to mobile? Because I
No,
missed
I'm
that part.
using a Wi-Fi router and I'm connected my mobile to the Wi-Fi router.
Okay, okay, okay. Physical hardware. Okay, okay.
Yeah, like over wire. I mean, it can be anything. It doesn't matter. But yeah, okay. So I'm using my mobile phone and trying to connect to google.com. The workflow for how the connectivity happens is, um, since I don't know the IP address, what resolves to google.com, right? The the message will go to router first, okay? And the router, since it's a new router, there's nothing cached in it yet, okay? Now even router doesn't know what google.com corresponds to, which IP address, it doesn't know. So it will then forward that request to your ISP, internet service provider, okay? So your internet service provider will have a global DNS database. Every internet service provider will have a global DNS database. So then your ISP, basically a DNS is it's like a database, right? It basically have all the name entries and the IP entries. Okay. So based upon the name google.com, it will search, okay, which IP address or which alias it corresponds to. It can correspond to google.co.in, right? So it will search. And then, okay, google.co.in corresponds to which IP address? It will search, right? And then it will send it back. Sometimes, okay, your ISP also may not have the global DNS entry for that particular website they're trying to search. It may not have it. So then it will forward the request to something called as a, a root database. So there is an organization called IANA, okay, Internet Authority for Name Assignments, okay. So that authority is maintaining, we call it as a root zone database. They will have entry of all the high level domains, like google.com and facebook.com, the high level domains, they will have entries. So
There
if
are
your
19 entries.
ISP does not, huh?
There are 19 or 13 something like entries, root entries, right?
No, there are actually so many of them. I will show you. They actually expose the database over the internet. I will show you that. There are
Okay.
actually more. Like every, for example, .com is one root zone database. .co.in, .au. There's so many. Like you can also register against your name, like .Vyanesh as an example. So all those have to be registered against IANA.
Yeah.
So basically, that's how it'll go. If ISP does not have it, it'll query the root zone database, which should have the entry. Okay, and then the response will be sent back with the IP address, and then correspondingly with the same path in the reverse order, ISP will send it back to the router. Router will then send it back to your phone. Again, this is not just accessing Google. You haven't accessed Google yet. It is just the path that you traverse to figure out what is the IP address of Google that you want to connect to. So now my
Can
mobile phone has, yes.
can you just like write down the path in which this goes, because it will
Okay, sure.
make me clear.
Okay. So it's mobile device to your router and to your ISP to the root zone database servers. So this is the DNS resolution path, right? Now the reverse of it is the response, the response for that request. So now my mobile device has the IP address that it needs to connect to Google. So now it'll, traverse over the network again, the same path, right? Mobile device, router, ISP, and then it'll connect to google.com. Then the page will load. So all of this is happening in a millisecond time frame, and it's so fast, right? Now, do I every time have to go to a ISP or a root zone database server in order to resolve, my DNS name? Maybe not, because every device has a caching capability. Okay, let it be your mobile, your router, your ISP, everyone has a caching capability. So today I access google.com, right? Let's say after a few hours, again I want to access google.com. My mobile device and the browser in the mobile device that I'm using already may have cached what IP address google.com corresponds to. It's already in the browser cache. So now it does not go through the entire path to figure out the IP. It just works. It knows the IP, it will just connect. Or let's say you cleared the browser, or you are now using a new browser in your mobile phone. Then obviously it's not in the browser, so it has to go to router. Okay. Now router will also cache. Okay. Please keep in mind that your router is a DNS server. It's a DHCP. It is a gateway. It has multiple functions that it does. Okay, your router does multiple functions, one of which is DNS. So your router is also caching the DNS entries. Okay, so now your router will respond back saying, hey, okay, this is the IP address for Google. So the request does not have to go to ISP and then come back. Internally only it knows what the IP address is. Okay, if your router also does not have it, then obviously let's go to ISP and then the whole path. So whichever is the location, whichever is the nearest location and the nearest device that can help you resolve your DNS name is what resolves it. Sometimes you may have noticed that when you try to access google.com, you were able to access just a few hours back, but now you are not able to. I mean, everything else works, just google.com you're not able to, right? You may have noticed sometimes. The reason could be, okay, could be the IP address that you resolved to, right, previously is not valid anymore. Maybe the IP address has changed on the Google side, or it's the corresponding server for that IP is down. Something is happening, right? But since your browser has cached that IP address, it will try to load that. Sometimes you may have to clear your browser cache and then reload, right? Because unless you do that, it is always trying to pick the IP address that you have cached, which does not exist anymore, right? So you have to clear all the cache so that then the query goes to router or ISP, and then you get the other available IP address. That's the reason why. Any questions
So
with
Mahi,
DNS? Yeah.
suppose if server is not down and I
Uh-huh.
cannot access Google.com, there might be chances that our mobile device is accessing the router's cache. For example, the
Uh-huh.
router's cache having IP addresses 10.7.4.5, which was the
Okay.
Google IP, one of the Google IP, right?
Uh-huh.
But unfortunately, my mobile device is accessing the same IP, but which is not accessible right now.
Yeah.
So what router will do? Router will send the packet to ISP. ISP also check whether it is available in their cache. Again, it will show to the root zone DB server, and it will send the new Google IP.
Yeah.
Maybe the because of the load balancing, that server is heavily busy. So router
Mm-hmm.
has to update a new entry of that Google
Yeah.
plus ISP, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
mobile device will access that IP. That
That's
is one
right.
of the use case.
That's right. Exactly. In fact, there is a concept called as TTL, time
Yeah.
to live. For every cache, this is very important, time to live. Now, you don't want this value to be too small or too big. Okay, there's that trade-off that you have to figure out. And again, these are default settings that go into every browser, every router, everywhere. The default settings. So we usually don't tend to interact with them as much, but just good to know, right? For example, uh, basically TTL defines how long, okay, how long or how much duration is the cache entry valid. Okay, for example, google.com resolved to a particular IP. Now I kept that in my cache. My router has that, in its cache. Now let's say TTL is set to 24 hours. That means until 24 hours, I will assume that google.com resolves to this IP and I will keep that entry in my cache. I will not delete that entry until 24 hours, which means if that IP address is down, right, then basically your TTL is high and you may end up failing to connect, right? If a TTL is very small, let's say just 5 minutes, that means every 5 minutes the entry in the cache is deleted, and now if someone is trying to connect, it again has to go to ISP or root zone database to actually fetch the DNS to IP entry, right? So that's the reason why you don't want the TTL to be very low or very high also. Okay, like different routers, different vendors, they keep different TTLs in their cache, so it can vary. But that's how TTL works. It tries to invalidate the cache after the time set on the TTL. If it is set to 4 hours, then after 4 hours, it will invalidate the cache entry for that particular google.com or any DNS entry. And then when the user tries to connect next, needing for the same website, it does not exist in router. It has to go back to ISP and then fetch from there the updated entry.
Got it.
So that's
What is the
TTL.
default value, for the router? TTL
No,
value.
like I've never
Okay,
explored
I
it.
will search it and I will get back to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. Now, dynamic versus static IP. Vineet, any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Now, static versus dynamic IP. I think this is straightforward, right? Static IP is something that you manually assign, right? Dynamic IP is what gets automatically assigned. So in the case of a router setup at home, right, your 192.168.1.2, 1.3, 1.4, it's not something that every time you come home, are you saying, okay, please assign an IP address for me to the router? No, it just gets automatically assigned, right? That's your dynamic IP. So if the IP gets automatically assigned to your device without needing, any manual intervention for you to assign it, it's a dynamic IP. Okay. Static IP is something that you have to manually assign, right? So previously this is like way back, right? This was the case that every consumer of internet, right, had to assign a static IP manually from the devices connecting from, mostly a computer, before you can access the internet. Okay, that used to be the case like way back, but not anymore, right? Like even when you're trying to access, internet from your mobile or laptop connected to router, are you assigning the IP address? No, because it's automatically assigned. Even that scenario is a dynamic IP where it gets automatically assigned. And every time you connect, let's say today you connected, you may get some 10 IP address. Tomorrow you connect again to access internet, you may get 20 IP address. So it can change. It does not have to be the same, because our thing is, hey, I need to access internet, man. I don't care which public IP I'm using, right? I'm not fancy numbers here, right? So that's dynamic IP. Static IP is something that manually assigned. So when you talk about the data center and the IT world, right, we always prefer static IPs, because there could be some script, some code, some logic that is pointing to an IP address, then the DNS name of that server. So for those reasons, we don't want to have a dynamic IP in a data center environment. Plus, um, you want to have control over your networks, like we use all these subnets and VLANs. So you would like to restrict to say, okay, this particular network, for example, 10.10.10.x network you want to use for storage devices, right? 20.20.20.x you want to use for servers, right? So you have something like this. You have some requirement like this that you want to segregate based on the IP range to certain device. So if you have all these requirements, right, dynamic IP will be tricky, right? So you would like to pick a static IP from this range. So usually that's what we do. And once the IP sticks to that particular device, we want to keep it. We don't want to keep changing the IP address for that particular device unless really needed, right?
Mahi, one
Now,
query here.
yes.
When we connect any mobile or computer or any server to the any router, for example, a router
Okay.
will assign a dynamic address. So that dynamic address will be public one, not private, correct?
Private also, right? Your 192.168 network is private network.
Yeah. But how means you can say the router will provide two IPs, private plus public, two IP addresses.
Absolutely. I mean, it is providing the private IP, and it is giving you the public IP via the ISP. Router is not assigning the public IP, right?
Right.
ISP is assigning the public IP, which is being routed through your router to your device. But basically, your device should have two IP addresses. If you want to connect over internet, you need a private
Right.
IP, you need a public IP.
So private IP will be provided by a router, which is a
Router.
dynamic one, right?
Yes.
Once
Yes.
it, for example, 192.168.1.2 is the private IP provided by
Okay.
router.
Mm-hmm.
After that, the public it will connect to the router, and router will again connect to the ISP. Then
Yes.
ISP will provide that ISP will provide one public IP to that
Yes.
device, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and that will also dynamic.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can test it as well. Like you connect, right? And then you disconnect, and then maybe after some time you reconnect again. There is no guarantee that you'll get the same public IP
Same,
address.
right.
Even with private IP,
We
there is no guarantee that you'll get 1.2. You can get 1.4 because maybe two
right.
other devices, they connected again, right? Because people get in the network and they get out, they turn off Wi-Fi, turn on Wi-Fi, go back, go outside, come back to the network. So it keeps changing.
If you want the static IP from the ISP, then we have to pay something, right? That is called we have to purchase the
Exactly.
domain
That's
or
a reserved IP concept. Yes.
yeah. Got it.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Also, since we are discussing this, there's a concept called as natting. Okay. So basically, guys, do you want to take a screenshot of this? Go for it. I'm gonna remove this.
Yeah.
It will be better if you just save that file and we can share it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah, that will, because we can edit or we can write down something after that
Okay.
at our own.
Where is this? Here. Yeah. So this concept called as NAT. Sorry, I'm saying NAS. NAT stands for Network Address Translation. Okay. So let's discuss a story now. Okay. Let's take Hyderabad as an example. In Hyderabad, there is a particular area, okay, called okay, which one should I pick? Okay, let's pick an easy one. MG Road. Okay, there's an area called MG Road. That's a very common area. So within MG Road, there are about 1,000 households, 1,000 homes. Okay, and let's assume everyone uses internet. So everyone is using ACT FiberNet, and everyone has a router. Okay, so for 1,000 households in that area, what ISP will do is they will not assign, like there's 1,000 households. Right now within the household there's a router, and that router could be connected to 10 devices. So there are total like 10,000 devices that could be connected in that network, right? In that area. So does my does my ISP assign 10,000 public IPs? Okay, do you
No,
think the router, the ISP will assign 10,000 public IPs for my area?
no,
No way. Because if they do that, right, I mean, there's no way they could have this whole business model. They won't be able to afford it, because every public IP is paid. Okay, it is not available for free. Every public IP, there is a cost associated for it, and ISP is paying for it on your behalf. I mean, in the sense, you are paying, your monthly charges to ISP, which includes the public IP cost that your ISP has to pay. Okay, so ISP will not assign 10,000 public IPs because there are 10,000 devices in your area. Okay, what they will do is they will create a pool of IPs. Maybe they will only keep like maybe 1,000 IPs, right? So they will create a pool of 1,000 IPs for your area. Now what happens? Let's say you are connected to the router, you are connected to the internet from your mobile device. You will get assigned one of the IP address from the 1,000 pool IP. Okay, you will get one IP address assigned. You will be able to browse, and you're gonna use it. Similarly, another user from another home, he wants to connect to internet, he will get the second IP from that pool. So there are still 998 IPs available. So as people are connecting to internet, right, that's when IP address is assigned to each of the household. Okay, and some service providers, what they do is, like for a particular router, okay, for a particular um, home router, they will assign only one public IP. But you're like, okay, if there's only one public IP, but I have my phone, I have my laptop, I have my iPad, I have my brother, sister, their phones. So there are 10 devices who all have to talk to internet. But with one public IP, how can they all talk to internet? NAT. NAT is what allows them to do that. So NAT stands for Network Address Translation. So let's consider a scenario. There's only one public IP assigned to my router. Only one public IP. But there are 10 devices. And all of them want to talk to internet. Right? So the general rule that we know is every device should have a public IP to be able to connect. But with one public IP, how can all these 10 devices communicate? Right? So what happens? let's say I'm the first device I'm trying to connect. I have a 192.168.1.2 private IP, right? My private IP is 1.2. I will send a request. It will go to router. Router is acting as a NAT gateway. Okay, your router will take the request that's coming from 1.2 IP, my private IP, and it will go send the response to ISP, and then Google resolve it, you know, get the web page, and then redirect that web page back to my private IP 1.2. Okay. Now let's say another device 1.3 IP is trying to connect to Facebook.com. Again, router will use the same public IP. Okay, it will use the same public IP, go to Facebook.com, fetch the web page, and route it back internally to the device that has requested Facebook.com, which is 1.3 IP. So here, when you are representing yourself in the public internet, you're not representing your device individually. Your router is representing on your behalf, because your router is what is going and representing that, hey, I am this public IP, please respond to me. And once the responses come, it will then route that web page to the private IP which is requested for it. That's how, even though you have 10 devices and one public IP, you can still work. You can still access internet. This is called NATing, network address translation. Because what is happening, because you only have private IP. A dedicated IP for you is only private IP. You don't have a public IP dedicated for you. But you are able to translate your network from private to public by using this concept.
So it's like a multiple private IP and the one public IP. Right?
Absolutely.
Combination of those two makes this netting possible.
Yes. Some call it internet proxy, if you have heard about it.
Sorry to interrupt. Netting is done at router level or at end device level?
The router level.
Okay. We have to set the policy router level. We have to use the NAT, or we have to use the bridge, or we have to use the host network, right?
Yes. And by default, it's NAT.
Okay.
So this is how all the service providers are able to make money. If they don't have this concept of NATing, then obviously they'll have to charge us for what additional they have to pay. So this is how it's helping.
Can we have two public IP addresses for one router?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just one question again. So is the same public IP can be assigned to the another house router, or like same public IP, or those will be unique?
Not at the same time.
Okay.
So today I got a 10.10.10.10, right? Public IP. That same IP could be assigned to someone else tomorrow.
Okay.
Because it is all coming from the pool, right? The pool of IP addresses. So it just keeps assigning, and once you are disconnected, the IP will then be reclaimed back to the pool. When you disconnect from internet, when your act does not connect to internet anymore, you shut down your router, etc. So only when you're participating in network is when IP address is assigned to you. When you're not, it is reclaimed back to the pool, and then whoever is next will probably get it.
Mahi, one last question. If suppose pool having 1000 IPs, at least a 1-to-1 mapping, minimum 1-to-1 ratio of number of IPs in the pool is equal to number of routers, right?
Not necessarily. In fact, that's one reason. No, not necessarily. Because that's one reason why sometimes, right, we don't get access to internet. Doesn't work. It's like, hey, everything is fine. The power is there, router is up, everything is fine. Why am I not able to? My cable is all perfect. Why am I still not able to access? Because there will be a exhaustion of public IP in the pool. Because again, now 1,000 households. Do you think all the 1,000 households at every time will try to access internet throughout the day? No,
No,
right?
different
Some
timing.
people go to office, some have night shifts. Um, some people are maybe not at home at all. Some are in vacation. That is the case, right? So there is a percentage of users that are not available all the time, and that's how ISPs again try to not give 1,000 IPs. They will give maybe 600 IPs only in the pool. So if it is
They are
and they could try to adjust it also, like depending upon weekends or holidays, then they try to add maybe more IPs. Okay, because they know that okay, more people are gonna stay home, and we shouldn't impact them, right? So they'll try to add more IPs and keep it. But again, on weekdays, they'll try to reclaim it and only use a little lesser number of IPs. So that's a dynamic thing. Again, they don't manually go ahead and do that. They'll use some kind of algorithm to automatically adjust that. So because maybe on evenings they add more because people come back from office and try to connect to internet. In the mornings they don't. In the late nights they don't. So there's some algorithm that they use to auto adjust that. And I mean the whole point being, they want to be, you know, make money, right, as much as possible. So yeah, and sometimes we don't get access to internet is for the very reason is that we're exhausted, and then when you call customer support, they'll say, hey, we are working on it, and it'll be fixed in the next few minutes. What they do is they increase the pool size, and now you have more IPs you can connect.
yeah, uh, got it. My thanks. And you're talking about some proxy here.
So if a NAT, if it is routing internet traffic, it's called as an internet proxy because it's acting as a proxy server, right? It's basically trying to route your private to a public. It's called as an internet proxy. There are certain servers. Again, I think I'm going to talk about this when we get into another service in AWS called VPC. I'm going to talk about a service called Internet Proxy. But just for now, keep in mind that Internet Proxy is a server that will act as an ad gateway. Okay, again, the use case and all that we'll discuss later.
Internet proxy is nothing but a router itself, right?
We don't call router as an internet proxy, but you can set up another server as an internet proxy.
Yeah, NAT gateway router, we can say.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, guys, can we take a quick 2-minute break?
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
2 minutes. Yep, 9:10 on my screen. We'll be back at 9.
Yeah, 9:15 will be fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm back.
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here as well.
Alrighty. Okay. So, okay, next topic is IP addressing scheme. Okay. So the one that is widely famous and the one that we are using is IPv4 addressing scheme. And the reason it's called IPv4 version 4 is because it has 4 octets. Okay, so like this x dot x dot x dot x. So each of the x is called as a octet. Anyone knows why it's called as an octet?
Because it's 8
So,
bit.
8 digit
That's right.
number.
It's 8 bits. So each octet is 8 bits. So it can be represented as something like 0 1 0 1 0 1 0 1, right? 8 bits. And the combinations for this is number of combinations is 2 power 8, right? Sorry. How much is that? 2 power 8? Anyone?
532, 61,
256.
256 or
Yeah, yeah, 256. So
Mhm.
that means each octet can have 256 combinations of binary. Okay, each octet can have 256 combinations of binary. So if I have to figure out what are the total combinations, like what are the possible number of combinations for this scheme, it is 2 power 8 into 2 power 8 into 2 power 8 into 2 power 8. How much is that?
I
32,
think
2
six.
power 32. So basically, when you have two powers, you have to add those, the power 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, 16 plus 16, 32. So 2 power 32. Now this corresponds to, some number of IP addresses. I don't remember the number. It's some, I think,
65,535 maybe.
no, no, no. 2 power 32 is a huge number, Janish.
Yeah,
2 power
you are
16 is
multiplying.
55,536.
Yeah. You are multiplying those numbers. I thought it's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah, it's
So
big
it's
number.
it's some 4 billion, I think, some 4.5 billion. It's a finite number. Okay, it's not infinite, it's a finite number, but um, maybe a few decades back it was a huge number, but now with pretty much every device is like Internet of Things, every device connecting to internet, smart devices, even your home appliances now connect to internet, your TV, everything, watch, like everything connects to internet now, which means everything needs to have a public IP address, right? And that means, and everyone's growing, like the internet is growing across, rural areas to villages. So many people are now getting connected to the internet. And so now this number 2 power 32 actually doesn't seem to be very big. Okay. In fact, that is one of the reason why the Internet Authority has come up with a newer addressing scheme called IPv6. So this is the latest IP addressing scheme. But we're going to focus on IPv4 our entire course, even with AWS, because IPv6, even though it's available, it's there, it is not implemented by either businesses or service providers or companies. Not a lot of them has actually implemented IPv6 yet. They are still using IPv4. Couple of things. One, um, because IPv4 is what everyone's like super familiar with, since decades. Network engineers, IT admins, they're so used to IPv4 scheming. So now a sudden shift to IPv6 is, not that easy, right? So it's, even though it's there, not a lot of people implement that. Two, um, the simplicity, because IPv6, yes, it definitely addresses by providing a larger address range, right? Like it's I would say it's unlimited, but it's not unlimited, but it's close to unlimited because it gives you a billion IP addresses. Okay, so it definitely has increased the range by multi-folds compared to IPv4. But then with that, right, also complexity comes because setting up things in IPv6 isn't either. It could be mostly due to familiarity because IPv4 is familiar and we are used to, so we are now like comfortable with it. But IPv6, I, I too like I had a feeling that hey, this is a little complex to really set it up and understand, right? So not a lot of people use IPv6, but okay, like google.com, they started using IPv6. So for example, if you're trying to connect to google.com from a device that is compatible with IPv6, okay, usually most of the smartphones are, then the response you get back, right, is actually an IPv6. Check it out. I mean, just check sometimes, just maybe try to do a ping on google.com and see what IP you get back. You'll get a IPv4 and IPv6 also. So Google is a setup for both. I mean, it all depends on you, your mobile device. If it wants to communicate over IPv6, Google can respond over IPv6. If you want to communicate over IPv4, Google can respond on IPv4. Okay, it has both IP addresses. And yes, a device can have both IPv4 and IPv6. Okay. So okay, to sum it up,
With a single name, for example, a single host name can result to two IPs, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, correct. So to sum it up, right, IPv4 is what we're gonna focus on through the entire course. Okay, we're not gonna discuss on IPv6, but I just brought the point of IPv6 because that's something that's there, and I don't know, at some point. I mean, this has been the talk since a while now. At least I'm seeing this in the last 6 to 8 years. That IPv6 is gonna take over, but it didn't really happen as much. Like even in AWS, they all everything is done on IPv4. You will not see IPv6, in AWS. So yeah, okay. Coming back to IPv4, let's talk about the IP address scheme and how the IP classes are set up. Okay, so there's something called as IP classes. So IP class is defined in different classes based upon the first octet numbering. Okay, in fact, let me share this document with you. 1 second, guys. Okay, so look at this. So this table indicates the different IP classes that are defined as a standard, right? Because in those days, right, there was no standard. Like this is a few decades back, there was no standards with respect to who is the authority to assign public IP. Everyone, if everyone is allowed to choose the public IP range that they like to use, I mean, they'll end up in having conflicts, right? You can't have the same IP address assigned to two devices, so you don't want that to happen. Plus, there was no clear picture around which IP should be used for private, like in the router network, as an example. You want to have some private IP, and there was no standard that everyone would use any IP for public, any IP for private networks, any range. There was no restriction. So that really, you know, uh, didn't help as much, and there are a lot of conflicts and non-standards. That's when the standard of class IP classes were defined, and these are what are available. So let's go through this table. The first IP class is class A, and like I said, the differentiation of different IP classes is made based upon the first octet. Among those 4 octets in the IPv4 addressing scheme, the first octet number is what defines which class it belongs to. So if your first octet is in the range of 1 to 126, then it's class A. If it is in the range of 128 to 191, that's class B. 192 to 223 is class C. 224 to 239 is class D, and 250 to 254 is class E. Okay, so these are the 5 different IP classes defined based on the first octet number. So which class does my router private network belong to?
C.
Class C. Exactly. So basically each class has its own octet, and based upon that, so class C is primarily used for private. So whenever you see usually, right, whenever you see any private network, it can be a router network or it can be some private network, right, they always try to use the range in this. Okay, now your public IP addresses, you will see them in this range, 1 to 126 and 128 to 191. You will see in this range. Class A and Class B are public IP classes. Class C is a private IP class. Class D and Class C are mostly for like the reserved IPs, or they're used for some research, um, etc. So that's why you see that most of the public IP addresses that you will notice will fall under Class A and Class B range. Class C is for private, and these two is for testing and research experiment purposes. Now, a few more things. This one, okay, this is again very important. Okay, N indicates it's a network, H indicates it's a host. Okay, so keep in mind that in class A, the first is representing network, and the remaining 3 are representing host. Okay, now here's where it can get a little tricky. Okay, so please ask me if you have any doubts immediately. Okay, now when I'm talking about a network, I'm talking about that particular network, right? Whenever I'm talking about that particular network. So a network is constant. When I select a particular network, that network is constant, right? Now I'm talking about devices or hosts within that network, but that network itself is constant. Okay, that's why the first octet in this case, which is representing network, is constant. So this does not change. What can change is the remaining 3 octets. Okay, because the first octet is the network, and the network is constant because I'm talking about that particular network. The remaining three octets represents the hosts that are getting the IP addresses within that network. That can change, right? Because I could have 10 hosts, 100 hosts, 1,000, 10,000 hosts, right? Depending on number of hosts that I have, the IP addresses will be assigned. Different combination needs to be assigned. So what changes is the last 3 octets. Okay, but as a blind rule, if you want to just remember this, remember that in class A, the first octet represents network, and the remaining 3 represents host. In class B, the first 2 octets represent network, the remaining 2 host. Class C, the first 3 octets represent the network, and the last one is host. Class A, Class B, Class C. Okay, so an example of a class A IP is maybe 10.x.x.x. Example of class B is 130.1.x.x. So I'm keeping the x.x only for the ones that indicate host, because those are the only ones that will change within that network, right? Because the first 2 are constant. For that network, the first 2 are constant. If I say 130.1, right, the first 2 is constant. And I say x.x, that means the remaining 2 octets is what will change. Guys, are you clear with this?
Yes. So the host is, you mean to say our device is the host?
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
Host is a device. So in class A, the first octet represents the network It's a constant. In class B, your first two octets represent the network. It's the constant. And the remaining octets can change depending upon how many hosts that you keep connecting. Okay.
So,
My
so are these IP are reserved for like class A already reserved for public only? Class A, class B, or
Um,
or
it is, but then it is not necessarily, it's not mandate that you have to use it for public only, because sometimes I'm sure in your internal network also you may have seen a 10.65, a 10 dot something, right?
Mhm.
You may have seen that IP in your private internal data center network also, because that's okay. I mean, you can use that because it is within your network, right? You can have a 10.65 network, some X company. There's a Y company who can also have a 10.65 network if it is within the network, because they both will never communicate, right? They're two different internal networks. So you can have a class A or a class B used within the network. But this, what I'm talking about, is a broader picture. So in let's say an AWS world, right? They will always use these IP addresses for I mean, okay, let me restate the other way. If there is a public IP address anywhere in the world, that public IP address will always fall in the range of class A and class B. You will not see a public IP in the range this or this or this. Does that help?
yes, but the reverse is possible. Like private
Yes.
private can go into A and B, but
Yes.
public can't come into C, D, E.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Sorry, Dennis, you were asking something.
yeah. Could you please scroll up my yeah for the class A the number of networks calculated
Mhm.
as 2 raised to 7 minus 2. So
Yeah.
first octet that is network is constant, right?
Yes.
So that number should be 255, right?
No, but on
How?
the first octet, you're only allowing 126, right?
Okay, so that's the limit. Okay, right. For the second one, you are limiting 128 to 191,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
And here both our numbers are constant in n and n. So
Mm-hmm.
255 is not there.
So the
Two,
way you calculate this here is, so 190, how many IP addresses are between 190 and 128? Let's count. 63, right? 63.
right, 63.
Okay. So now 63 combinations can be here, right? You can have 63 combinations here. In the end, you can have 63 combinations, right? The
Right,
first octet. In the second
right.
octet, you can have 256 combinations, because the restriction is only for first octet, right?
Only first octet. Okay,
Here you can have 63. Here you can have 255,
255.
let's say, right? Multiply that, you'll get this number.
63 into 255, you can say.
Yes, correct.
Okay,
You'll get this number.
that's number of networks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Similarly,
For
here
host
also the same thing. First octet
and
is restricted, but the other two octets you can have 255 up to 255 and 255, right? So when you
right.
multiply, you'll get these many networks.
My one question 192.168.10.5 is one of the IP, and second is
Okay.
192.160.20.5 is the IP.
Uh-huh.
So it will not communicate, right? Both will not communicate.
Absolutely, because they are in different networks, right? So okay, let's use that example. I think it will help beneath as well. So if you have two private IP addresses, so first network one is 192.168.10.5, and then you have network two, which is 192.168.20.5. Now, first of all, which IP class does it fall into?
C.
C, right? Class C, that we are clear. Okay. And in class C, what is the N and H? The first three are N's, the last is H, right?
Right.
Okay. So N, 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 H, N, 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 H. Like I said, for a particular network, the first three are constants in class C. That means these three are constants. The only thing vary can be this. That means within the 192.168.10 network, only the devices that have .1, .2, .3, .4, .254 are in that network.
Right.
Because this is a different network now again. .20 is a different network. The only thing that is part of this 20 network is .1, .2, .3, .4 after 20. So these are two different networks.
Right. So we have to use some router or some device to communicate.
Yeah, you gotta, basically some, depending upon layer 2 or layer 3 connectivity, you have to allow them, yes.
Okay.
Binit, is this clear?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And 192.168.10.5 and 20.5, the subnet mask is different, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's up to you, right? Okay, I'll come to subnet mask after this. Okay, just hold that thought. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, going back. So that's the number of networks. Default host per network is basically this is representing your H, right? Like in this case, you can have three combinations of H's, right? 255 into 255 into 255. That is this number. Here you can have two combinations of H, 255 into 255. That is this number. Here you can have only one combination of it, that is 254. I mean, so basically you'll have 256 IPs, but then the first IP is used by the network itself. The last IP, 255, is used for multicasting. So you'll have 254 only. The first IP in the network is gone. Yeah, the last IP is gone for broadcasting. So you'll only have 254 in any network if, basically first and last is gone. Okay. So, all right, let's talk about subnetting now. Okay, now it gets very interesting. Okay, so the name itself, right? The name itself is indicating actually what it does. Subnet, as in it's a sub network. That means there's probably a bigger network and we are dividing them into sub networks, right? That's exactly what subnet does. It basically divides a bigger network into sub networks. Now, why do you want that? Why do we have to divide that, right? Multiple reasons. One, so let's take an example, right? Let's say I have a 10.10.x.x network, okay? Which IP class does this fall into?
A.
Yes, class A, right? Okay. Now, how many IP addresses can I have here in this network 10.10xx? 2 power 8 into 2 power 8, right? These are the two combinations.
Right.
Minus 2, some 16, sorry, not 16, 65,534, I think. So I can have total IP addresses. This is a 65,534.
16.
Huh?
Okay.
It's 2 power 16, right?
It's class A, na?
Yeah.
So the number of IPs will be 16,77,214.
I didn't get you.
No, this is for the particular this network.
Yeah, talking
two,
about this particular network.
where first two is already constant and
Yes.
variable is only last two.
So what we are talking
Yeah.
about, Dhyanesh, is if it was 10.x.x.x, but that's not my network. I'm picking a 10.10xx network. I mean, you can pick a 10.xxx network also, right? I'm not picking that.
Okay. Okay. I
Okay,
thought
I'm picking a 10.10.
10.10.x is a class B, but not it's not
No,
a class
no,
B.
yeah,
It's a
because
class
first
A.
octet is, yeah,
Yeah, it's right.
okay. So I have these many IP addresses. Now, my requirement is I don't need these many IP addresses for this network. My number of hosts max to max maybe 200. So I know that max hosts that I will configure in my network is only 200. So why do I need a 65,534 range network? It doesn't make sense, right? That means I have to shorten my network. I don't need such a huge network, right? That's where subnets will help. So in this case, what I will do is, first of all, I will go for a 1010, maybe 1.x, right? I will go for this network, 1010 1.x, because I don't need that huge network. With this network, 1010 1x, how many IP addresses can I have?
256.
256. So minus 2, let's say 254. I can have 254. So this meets my requirement. 200, 254, I'll keep some for any future growth. This meets my requirement, right? So I converted, right, from what was a 1010xx to a 1010 1x network. This is defined by subnetting, okay, in something called as a subnet mask. A subnet mask representation is same as your IP representation. It's an octet. It is binaries, 4 octets. Same way, a subnet mask is exactly the same notation as your IP address. Okay, and the way you notate it is just the same way. Let's call it y dot y dot y dot y for subnet. Okay. Now subnet. Okay, let's get a little more into this. Okay, a subnet is called a subnet mask. Does anyone know why it is called a subnet mask?
It masks the bits.
Exactly, it's masking the bits. For example, a subnet mask for this particular IP is gonna be 255.255.255.0. Why? So this all comes back to binaries, right? Like for example, the way 10 is represented in binary is, I think it is 000000, no, 1010. I think this is 2, this is 8. Yeah, that's right. Okay, this is how binary 10 is represented in binary. Okay, now subnet mask for this defines as 11111111. That means it's 255.
Mahi, could you please reshare screen because I am only seeing max host up to 200 that much.
Is it? Yeah.
Now I can see 10. Yeah, yeah. I can see 10 as 0010 and 255 as 1111. Okay.
Now you see it?
Yeah, I can see 10
Oh,
as 10's representation and 255 representation of binary.
okay. So the way subnet mask works is basically a logical AND. It's a logical AND. Okay. The way the rule for logical AND is AND is an operation between two bits, right? So 00 is 0, 01 is 0, 10 is 0, only 11 is 1. right? So only when there are 2 ones, the result is 1. For every other, it's 0. That's how logical AND works. Apply the same thing here. Okay, 1 0 0 1 0 0 1 0 0. Only when 1 1 it's 1 1 1 it's 1. So basically, the way logical AND is working is it is masking the bits, right? So whenever there is a 0, it's giving a 0. Whenever there's a 1, it's giving a 1 based on this, right? That means whatever you have here is right. Like if I have a 10 here, 10 when you mask it with 255, you'll get 10. That means this will not change. Your 10 will not change. For this network, 10 is constant. Similarly, again I have 255 here. When I do AND between 10 and 255, again it's 10. So this is again constant. Now when I do AND between 255 and 1, again it's 1 only. So again it is constant. Now when I do between 0 and any number here, right? So basically when I have 0, that means I'm not masking anything. I will allow everything. That's why you can have a number from 1 to 255 in the last octet for this sub network, for this subnet mask. Is it clear?
But you have chosen this default subnet mask as 255.255.255.0, but that is for class C, and we have taken an example of class A, that is 10.10.1.x, and the default subnet mask for 10, which is 255.0.0.0, right?
So just 1 second, guys. This got some invitation. 1 second. Sorry, yeah, go for it. Well, what
we
was
have
the question?
taken we have taken the IP as class A IP, that is 10.10.1.x or x.x, and the default subnet mask for the class A is 255.0.0.0, but you have used here 255.255.255.0. So why it is so? The class for the class A, the default subnet is 255.0.0.0, but you have taken here the 255.255.255.0.
Okay, I didn't quite understand the question, but okay, let me explain.
Yeah, let me clarify my question. You have taken the IP, that 10.10.x.x, which is of range class A, correct? And the default subnet mask for class A is 255.0.0.0. But at the bottom, you have used the default subnet mask for class C, not for class A. That is 255.255.255.0. Means the IP is from class A, but default subnet is masked from class C. If you have take an example of class A IP, then we have to use the default subnet mask of class A, right?
No, that's why it's called default subnet, right? That doesn't mean that's the only subnet that will work.
On what basis you have chosen that 255.255.255.0? That's my question.
Because my requirement is only 200 IPs, and I know that in this subnet I will get 254 IPs, which meets my requirement.
That's why you have taken the default subnet mask as 255.250. Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, my requirement is only 200 IPs, and I know that in this subnet mask, I will get 254 IPs. So that meets my requirement, right? Now, default subnet doesn't mean that that's the only subnet possible. No. It's just saying that that's a default subnet. But your subnet, you can define different subnets for any class of IPs.
Okay.
So because subnet, all it's doing is breaking down your network, right, to a smaller network. So you can pick any subnet.
Yeah, and last question. After ending of 10.10.1.x and 255.255.255.0, what is the result of that ending?
It's 10.10.1.x.
means only 254 IPs we can get,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And what?
Now,
Yeah.
let's consider same example, but
And what
your
is the
subnet
subnet
is
mask? Here subnet is 254. Can we say?
which one?
What is
Yeah,
the
yes,
subnet for the right? 254.
you can have a 254. Yeah.
So I am asking what the subnet value is 254. Correct?
So I didn't get you,
The
Ganesh.
total IPs yes, is asking maybe. Is
Total
it
IP is here. It's 254. Yes.
Okay. In most cases, subnet is 12, 24. That's why I'm asking.
That I will come. So that's basically called a CIDR notation.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I will talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. So for example, if my IP number of IP address that I need in my network is even lesser, I don't even need 200. I just need a, maybe 100, right? Then you could have a 128 here. That means you're further dividing your network from 254 IPs to 128. So the number of IP addresses that are possible here is again 126 now. So in my 10.10.1x, I can only use up to 126 IP addresses from 1.1 to 1.127. That's the number of IP addresses I can use because I'm masking the other ones, right? You can again make this 224 as an example. That means you are only allowing how many? 24, 24, 24, 31 IP addresses. You're only allowing 31 IP addresses here now. So based upon your subnet mask, you are limiting how big or how small your network should be based on this. Okay. Now let's talk about that CIDR notation. Now, obviously, so basically now what we concluded is whenever we're talking about IP, it's not just the IP, you have to represent the IP and the subnet. Okay, it's not just the IP, it's IP and subnet. Now, obviously, IP itself is 4 octets. Now, again, subnet is another 4 octets. So representing both of them in that, that octet notation, right, is, like 8 octets that you have to talk about. So to simplify it, right, the CIDR notation was introduced. So with CIDR notation, you basically indicate it as a slash, like 28 or a slash 16 or a slash 24. You indicate your subnet in this format. So the same 224 is represented in one of these easy format. So you can write the entire IP as your IP slash subnet mask in the CIDR notation. It's more easy to represent. Now, how do I know which CIDR number represents which subnet mask, right? So there's a trick that you can use. For example, if you're talking about slash 24. Now, what does this correspond to? Easy math is
254?
always subtract this number from 32. So basically 32 minus 24, which is 8, right? Now, from the left, from the right, try to represent the subnet mask from the right. Okay, so that means 8. Every octet indicates 8, right? So obviously the last octet itself in the subnet mask. So let's call it y y y y, right? So this last octet will complete this 8 bits, right? So this one is the variable. Let's call it v. So only the last octet can change, and the remaining ones should be constant. Now, if let's say this is 28, right? That means this is 4. So in this, the way you represent is only 4 numbers can change out of 8. That means 2 power 4 numbers can change, right? If 2 power 4 numbers can change and everything else needs to be constant, the subnet mask will be not 248, 2 power 4 is 16, right? So 255 minus 16 is 240. This will be the subnet mask. So /28 is this subnet mask. /24 is 255, 255, 255, 0. Similarly, /16. Does anyone know what is /16? Just do the math, right?
Yes, so it's 255, 255, 00.
Exactly. Just do the math again. 32 minus 16 is 16. So you have to leave the last from the right. You have to leave 16 digits. So 8 and 8, right? So that's basically variables. The remaining is 255. So that's 255.255.0.0. Janesh, is this clear?
We are calculating the default subnet mask, right? That 255.255.0.0, right?
Not default, just subnet mask.
We are calculating the subnet mask.
Yes, yes.
But
Like how this CATR
how
notation and the subnet
but
mask
how
is related.
but how is the, for example, you have given the IP as 192.168.10.5/24. So that 24 number comes from where?
That's your subnet mask. The /24 is indicating how big is your network, right? Like for example, one 192.168.10.5, right? /24. So this indicates it has subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, which means the last octet is the one that is variable. That's the one that can change. That means this number is what can change. Right now it's 5, but it can be anywhere between 192.168.10.1 to 192.168.10.255. This is the address range that this network has. Not clear?
Clear, but where should I know that /28 and /16? Who gives that number? /28,
Your
16. Are
network
these?
team. Your network team
Yeah.
does that because they are the one who are managing the network, right? Like how many IP address should be in the network, how should be, how big the network should be, or you discuss with them saying, okay, I'm going to buy these many storage devices, so I need these many IPs. So give me a network that has these many IPs. So accordingly, they will divide the subnet and give it to you.
So 28 is the subnet number, right? Which can have 28 is the subnet, right? Which can we calculate in that subnet how many IPs will be there from
Yeah,
network team? Because they know that.
absolutely. Yeah, we can
But
also
can
know
we
that. So
calculate without having
/28.
intervention of the team?
Yes, Dhyanesh. So /28, right? The way you calculate is /28 subtract 32 from 28. Always subtract from 32. 32 minus 28 is how much?
4.
4. Do 2 power 4. How much?
16.
16. Remove 2 IP addresses, first and last. How many are left?
14.
That is the number of IP addresses in that network.
Okay.
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 All right. Binit, are you clear as well?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, that's the subnet thing. In fact, let me show you a few websites that I kind of use.
What is the, sorry, what is the gateway? So that we always get like 3 IPs, right? One is our IP, one is subnet and gateway.
Yeah, right. So gateway. Okay, let's talk about gateway. As the name itself indicates, right? It's the gateway outside of your network. For example, let's say there are two networks, right? The network one is 192.168.10.x. Okay, and there is network 2, 192.168.20.x. Now I have a device in this network which is 192.168.1 sorry 10.5, and I have a device in this network 192.168.20.5. My requirement is this network this device needs to talk to this device. So obviously they are in two different networks. Okay. Now for this network to traverse to another network, it has to traverse via the gateway. So gateway for any network is the entry or the exit point. So let's say the gateway for this network is 192.168.10.1. Let's say that's the gateway. And the gateway for this network is 192.168.20.1. So now 10.5 wants to talk to 20.5. 10.5 has to exit the network first. And what is the IP that it will use to exit? This. And then it has to enter the second network, which IP? This. And then finally, it reaches this device. So whenever a device in one network needs to reach a device in another network, it has to go via the gateway. The same thing happens when you're trying to connect internet from your mobile device through a router. Router will have a gateway, right? So when you're connecting to a Google server, right, you're basically exiting from your router network to a public network. And how is that routed? Gateway to gateway. So here, the two networks communicate between gateway to gateway.
So is there any rules like in subnet we have like how we have like 255, 255, 255.0. So for gateway IPs, are there any like rules or something?
No. Usually, it's the first IP that people use, usually, but in the network, but that is not mandatory. Like for example, you could have a network like 10, 10, 10, 1 slash 28, right? Which will basically have the IP address in 10, 10, 10, 1, 2, 10, 10, 10, 16, right? That's the range. So here for this network, gateway can be 10, 10, 10, 1, right? Let's say there's another network 10, 10, 10, 17 slash 28, right? For this, the starting IP address can be 10, 10, 10, 17 to 10, 10, 10, 32. For this, the gateway can be for this network 10, 10, 10, 17. Or I'll probably give it as usually, right? The first IP in the network is given for gateway usually, but I mean that does not have to be true. I mean it's up to your network team. They can give any IP address in this range as a gateway. Maybe 18.
One question. For in first example, you have taken as 192.168.10.5, and second is 20.5, and we have to communicate between 10.5 to 20.5, right?
Yeah.
So that gateway 10.1 is a IP which is assigned to any other device or other port or other NIC card. It's how?
No. 10.1 is assigned to your network, right? Your network itself will take the 10.1. The first IP is taken by your network, which is nothing but your switch.
Switch itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, switch is what is doing the network connectivity, or router, if router is what is doing the network connectivity. Whichever device is doing the network connectivity is the one who will, take that IP.
if suppose 10.5 belongs to one switch and 20.5 belongs to another switch, right? And that
Okay.
10.5 have near about 15 hosts are connected, and that another switch have connected 15 devices, right?
Okay.
And we want to communicate both those devices, means
Okay.
switch end, right?
Okay.
So we have to and the gateway for first switch is 10.1 and gateway for second switch is 20.1. Then
Okay.
we have to connect on cable or LAN cable between these two ports, right? So
Absolutely.
that they will communicate.
Because in physical medium, you need a physical medium, right? For in order to
Right.
communicate. So yeah, you need to have connectivity between the physical connectivity between two switches. Absolutely.
But the physical connectivity between these two ports, that two ports have the
No.
same IP, 10.1 and 20.1. I'm saying these are the gateways, right?
Yeah. Again, IP addresses are logical things, right? So you can assign.
Right.
So basically, a switch can manage multiple networks. For each network, there will be a gateway IP, and all of them can be managed by the switch because they are for different networks.
Okay, single switch can have multiple networks. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Binit, does that answer your query about gateway?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, cool, cool.
I please share the links you are using for this networking session. So that,
Yeah. Okay, let's look at a few links here, and then we'll call off for today. All right, iana.org. So yeah, so this website iana.org is the Internet Assigned Number Authority, right? If you go under the root zone management and go to the root zone database, so you will see all the domains here. So .a belongs to someone, .ac belongs to someone, .actor, .aero. There's so many, right? All these domains have to be registered. These are the root, the top, the root domains. These should be registered with IANA.baby. So you will see all of this. So if I go to, maybe let's go to in or .in, right? So see .in is National Internet Exchange of India. So there will be, you go to root servers. So these are all the root servers for .in. So if ISP does not have the entry for a particular website, then one of these root servers will. So it will go back to one of these root servers and then fetch. Okay, that's that. And then there's a tool that I often use for subnetting if I am too lazy to calculate the networks and etc. I tend to use this. I think it's called IPCalc. This one. So here what you can do is you can give the IP address range, let's say 10 dot, okay, let's use 192.168.10.0, 10.1 to start with, right? And then you need a /24, then say calculate. So it will give you that this is the network address, subnet mask is 222.250 corresponding /24. And the minimum or the starting IP address is .1, and you can go up to 254, and total is 254, right? If I do like a 28, let's say, I will have a smaller network, right? See, I can have only 14 IP address now from 1 to 14, right? So if you want even more IP, so 14, if it's not enough, you want more, you go for 27. They'll give you more IP address. Or if you want to go for even a bigger range, maybe like 10.10.0.0, right? and then give it as /16. See, I now have 60,534 IP addresses in this network and subnet mask. Okay, I will share some of these links with you so you could keep them handy. All right, guys, any final questions before we drop?
No, man.
Okay, Vinith?
So tomorrow, same time?
Yes, tomorrow also same time.
Okay. So tomorrow, are we like getting to any AWS topics or?
Not yet, because still a little more networking concepts, and then we have discussed Linux basics.
Because
Then we
AWS
get into
we can
AWS.
jump directly. First starts with basic, because after that it will be much easy for us, because during the
Exactly.
AWS we cannot ask these questions, simple questions. We have to go on through it, right?
Yeah.
Before
The
that,
other thing
we have basic.
when we get into certain services like VPCs and the few services which need you to understand the subnets and thing, because that's one of the core service in AWS. Like even when you work real time, right? You are expected to know these things, because that service that's the base for AWS. It's a service called VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. And this will be the base for it. In fact, Linux also, there are certain things that, I mean, you might already know some of these, but there are certain things that are specific to AWS and how AWS does. And that's why I'm covering all this.
Okay. Yeah. No problem.
All right. Okay, guys. So we'll talk to you tomorrow then, 8 a.m.
See you.
Bye.